Hey guys, Alex here from the DMs Club on the Titanbear Gaming YouTube channel. I'm continuing to go through Xanathar's Guide to Everything, and today I'm focusing on the new rogue archetypes that we have available. We get 4 new ones here in Xanathar's Guide. We get the Inquisitive, the Mastermind, the Scout, and the Swashbuckler. And they're interesting. I like some better than others. Some of them I think are a little bit of a waste of time, but we'll go ahead and get to it. The rogue section begins on page 44 if you want to follow along. And just like all the other classes, it begins with talking a little bit about your thematic element and details for your character that you might want to bring to the table. The first piece that it talks about is your guilty pleasure. This is some kind of impulse or something that you can't really control, that anytime that it's in front of you, you just have to grab at it or something like that. And they give you some interesting things like large gems or a new ring for your finger to help kind of convey the idea that you can't really help yourself if something is in front of you, just seize it and kind of be something of a treasure hunter. Or in a social circumstance of something like a smile from a pretty face or a chance to deflate someone's ego. It's some cool stuff. I like the ideas. It talks about your adversary, what kind of rival you might have, whether it's on the side of the law or if it's another criminal, someone that you've run afoul of before or somebody that you're competing with. It's kind of a cool idea. The last one is the benefactor, which is an interesting take on kind of a Jabba style relationship between like Han Solo and Jabba the Hutt, where maybe you've got somebody in a position of power that you owe a favor to or you owe money to or something, or maybe you even just owe your own existence within working in the criminal underworld to someone that you owe a weird criminal form of fealty, or someone else that's simply done a nice favor for you. For example, here they talk about the beggar king has hidden you from your pursuers many times in return for future considerations, or a smuggler kept you from getting caught but lost a valuable shipment and it was your fault, so now you owe them money. Stuff like this. It's an interesting idea, interesting ways to help tie you into kind of a more underworldy community. So let's go into the roguish archetypes. The first one is Inquisitive, and it's basically trying to make you like an Inquisitor in Pathfinder or in prior versions of Dungeons & Dragons, but they call it the Inquisitive in this case. And it's basically someone that's there trying to root out mysteries or trying to find in a community if there is someone who doesn't belong, like a witch or a demon or a devil or a shape changer or something else along these lines. This tries to equip you with kind of powers that you need to make these kinds of social deductions and to try and investigate inside social spaces who doesn't belong or who's lying or something else along these lines. It doesn't give you any kind of powers in terms of combat, so it's a little bit funky from that point of view. Everything else in 5th edition does give you some kind of combat power or some kind of combat ability. All the other archetypes do. So it's a little bit funny, and I'm not sure how often people are really going to use this, but let's go through the powers so you know what I'm talking about. The first one is Ear for Deceit, which is cool. It basically makes it so that you can't roll anything lower than an 8 on an insight check, which is nice and is going to be very relevant for if you're going to be doing this kind of social investigation or social sleuthing. It's funky that it's 8 or lower. In this case, they call it 7 or lower. You treat as an 8. It's kind of funky because otherwise our real precedent for this is reliable talent for the rogue class for treating anything under a 10 as a 10. 8's a little bit kind of a weird choice, but okay, we can go with it. Eye for Detail is an interesting power. You can basically take a bonus action to make a perception check to spot a hidden creature or make an investigation check to discover clues. This one's funky. This one really only is useful or has any level of strength to it if your dungeon master is already abiding by the 5th edition rule that says that it takes an action to make one of these checks in combat. I'm not sure how many dungeon masters actually abide by that. It's kind of a weird thing that forces people to really heavily decide not to make skill checks of any kind while they're in combat. So I don't know how often people actually use this, but if that's the case, then I guess you've got a power for it now. Insightful Fighting at 3rd level is the closest thing to a combat power that you get. It's a little bit funky. It basically says as a bonus action, you can make an insight check against a creature opposed by their deception. If you succeed, you no longer need to have advantage on that target to get your sneak attacks. That's okay. I don't really know who has a hard time making sneak attack happen, especially now in 5th edition, since sneak attack doesn't actually require you to be flanking in the traditional sense. It just needs to have an ally within 5 feet of the target. I don't know who struggles to make sneak attacks happen, but I guess this is okay for those weird cases where you do have a hard time. I'm not really sure. I guess the only other thing is that the benefit lasts for 1 minute, and so it can help you bridge those couple of rounds where you may not otherwise have sneak attack. Or maybe if you're fighting on your own, but the Swashbuckler is way better at fighting on your own. So I don't really know what the value for this one is. At 9th level, you pick up Steady Eye, which is cool from a role-playing perspective and from an investigation or a survival perspective. It basically says you have advantage on any perception or investigation check if you move no more than half your speed on the same turn. So you're going to want to be putting this guy out for looking for traps or doing any kind of perception style things, keeping an eye out or scouting as they're heading out in front of the party. That's cool. I like that. A passive advantage on these rolls is good. That's helpful. At 13th level, you pick up Unerring Eye, which is thematically a cool power. As an action, you sense the presence of illusions, shape changers not in their original form, and any other kind of magic designed to deceive the senses. You don't know what their base form is supposed to be. You just get the niggling sensation that there's something amiss with this person. That's cool. It's thematic for being an Inquisitor or an Inquisitive in this case. It's also a little bit weird because it's the kind of thing that an insight check, a high enough insight check or a perception check is supposed to look through in the first place. So I'm not really sure I understand what its value is. Then at 17th level, you pick up Eye for Weakness, which basically makes it so that whenever you have your insightful fighting feature applied to somebody, you get some passive benefits for attacking them. Your sneak attack damage against that creature increases by 3d6 damage. That's cool. I really feel like that should have gone into the original insightful fighting power, maybe with a lower damage modifier on it, just to help give some kind of combat oomph to this character. My real beef for the Inquisitive comes from the fact that it's built to do the kinds of things that any other character could normally be doing with roleplay or with insight checks, just with a lot of insight checks. And 5th edition is already insight heavy. Anybody that's playing 5th edition makes way too many insight checks to begin with. So I kind of wonder what's the point of this guy. On to the next one, Mastermind. This one does show up in our Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, and so we're getting a new printing for it here, maybe with some slight changes to it. This one's supposed to be, from a role-playing perspective, kind of a master of intrigue, a character that is very brain-centric, very strategy-centric, and is very cunning and very planning oriented. And it's interesting because you get a couple of powers that help you utilize friends and allies on the battlefield to be a little more effective. The first power that you get is Master of Intrigue. You get a whole bunch of proficiencies, disguise kit, forgery kit, gaming set, languages, as well as you get kind of an interesting power where if you listen to someone speak for just 1 minute, you are then able to reproduce that region's mannerisms and dialect and whatnot to sound like you were originally from that region. That's cool. It's a nice RP element. At 3rd level, you pick up Master of Tactics, which is cool and is kind of the first combat level thing that you get here. Is you can use the help action as a bonus action. Now, the normal details for help is that you need to be within 5 feet of the target or 5 feet within the person who you're helping or something like this to give them advantage on their attack rolls for the next turn. But this one lets you be able to do it within 30 feet instead. So you can do it from a little bit further range away. Again, it does give you a thing for a bonus action, and rogues are already very heavy on what they're going to be using for their bonus action, so you're going to have yet another thing to weigh for how you want to spend your bonus action economy. But I would be doing this a lot. I think help gets very underused otherwise because taking a full action to do it is really hard within the rule set, and so being able to do it as a bonus action means you can do this a lot more. So I like that. I think that's interesting. If I was going to be playing one, I'd basically be looking to do a help action wherever I possibly can. At 9th level, you pick up Insightful Manipulator, which is kind of interesting. It basically says that you spend a minute watching the person, and then the dungeon master can tell you whether they are your equal, your superior, or your inferior on intelligence, wisdom, charisma, class levels, etc. This could be helpful for certain cases where you're trying to do some kind of information or reconnaissance gathering, but otherwise I think it's kind of underwhelming. How much your intelligence modifier doesn't really matter, your wisdom modifier, charisma modifier, maybe if you've got some kind of critical charisma check or something that you want to be doing, but otherwise you're just as well off going to find out what those are in combat fighting against the creature. Being able to know what kind of class levels the creature has is probably beneficial, but it doesn't specifically say that it tells you what those class levels are. It just tells you whether they are superior, equal to, or inferior for you for class levels. So it's a little bit funky. I think that the dungeon master Master needs to add a little bit to this to tell you what kinds of class levels they may have in order for this to really be worth it. At 13th level, you pick up Misdirection, which is also kind of a funky one in terms of using your allies on the battlefield. You basically want to picture this one as if you are small and hiding behind someone, and your friend is then giving you cover of some kind, either partial cover or total cover, and an attack is then meant for you. You can then make it so that your friend takes the attack instead. So instead of the benefit being just cover, they can take the shot for you instead. And in order to do it, you need to spend your reaction to make it happen, which is a fine use for a reaction, but it's a pretty specific circumstance. You're basically going to have to be trying to hide behind people, and you really have to be small in order for this to happen in the first place. So if that's what you're doing, then cool, you've got a new power that you can utilize for it, but otherwise it's pretty specific. At 17th level, you pick up the last thing that you get for the Mastermind, which is Soul of Deceit, and this basically makes you immune to telepathy or mind reading effects. It gives you an interesting power that you can make a deception check to try and present false thoughts to someone trying to read your thoughts, as well as anytime that you're within some kind of like a zone of truth or something else, it detects that you are telling the truth, even if you aren't necessarily. That's okay. All of these powers are interesting, and I think that they're, basically a complement to the Inquisitive, but I feel like Wizards wasn't really sure how they wanted to make these things happen. I'm happy that they throw a little bit more combat stuff in here for the Mastermind. Not that I'm particularly combat heavy. I actually really like roleplay in general as my preferred form of playing for an RPG. But it still feels a little bit weird if all of the things that you get are just roleplay related, when all of the other class archetypes are all power related. They're all combat related, and you're going to be doing combat, so not having them is going to make you feel a little bit lower power than everybody else. So I don't particularly like the Inquisitive, and I don't particularly like the Mastermind, but I think some people will like the Mastermind better than the Inquisitive for certain roleplay reasons. The next archetype that we have is the Scout, and this one kind of drops us back to a little more of a normal style for an archetype. The Scout is basically intended to be someone that is stealthing around, walking through the wilderness, performing the normal scout role for an army or for a band of mercenaries or something else along these lines. You get some cool stuff for it. At 3rd level, you pick up Skirmisher, which is nice. You can move up to half your speed as a reaction when an enemy ends its turn within 5 feet of you. So if someone walks up to you, you can then take a reaction to walk slightly out of their way, half your movement speed. It can go pretty far. What's more is this movement doesn't provoke opportunity attacks, so you can actually be really difficult to keep sitting directly in front of an enemy. Great if you're ranged. You also get Survivalist at 3rd level, which gives you double proficiency on nature and survival skills. That's pretty good. You'd hope to have that kind of thing as a scout, someone who's going to be out as a front runner in front of the party. At 9th level, you pick up Superior Mobility. Your walking speed increases by 10 feet, as well as if you have a climbing or a swimming speed, those also increase. That's good. Being a little bit faster will definitely be of help. At 13th level, you pick up Ambush Master, which is cool. I like the powers for this one. You have advantage on initiative rolls, flat out, so that's great, +5 effectively. It's the mathematical equivalent of a +5. In addition, the first creature that you hit during the first round of a combat becomes easier for you and your friends. All attack rolls against that target have advantage until the start of your next turn. That can be really great if you're winning the advantage roll. Help set up your friends to take someone out real quick. At 17th level, you pick up Sudden Strike, which is also a cool power, though I kind of wish that it would have shown up earlier in the class. You can strike with deadly speed. If you take the attack action, you can make one additional attack as a bonus action. The attack can benefit from your sneak attack even if you've already used it, but you can't use the sneak attack on the same target. So if you're going to walk out there and attack someone, you can make a bonus action to make another attack with sneak attack on someone else. Hit 2 targets with your sneak attack for the turn. That's cool. That's pretty good. I like this. I think that especially if you're going to pair Ambush Master at 13th level with the power that the Gloomstalker Ranger ends up getting, where they get to make bonus attacks on the first round and stuff, you can have a pretty hard hitting first strike team if you're going to have both the Scout and the Gloomstalker in the party. But otherwise, these powers are okay. They're all pretty passive. There's not really a whole lot going on to them, and I don't really know how strongly these channel the thematic element of a Scout, but it's okay. I like it better than the other 2 archetypes. The last archetype is the one that I'm actually the biggest fan of for this, and I've actually used this at our game table, so I know how well this ends up playing out, and that's the Swashbuckler. The Swashbuckler is intended to be exactly what it sounds like, kind of a swashbucklery, daring, charismatic, pirate type character that has a bunch of cool powers. At 3rd level, you pick up Fancy Footwork, which is anytime that you attack someone, that target can't make opportunity attacks against you for the rest of the turn. It's great. It's pretty good. You're able to walk in, attack somebody, and then walk out without them being able to hit you with an opportunity attack. This is very important for when you're dealing with some of the other powers that you have here as the Swashbuckler. At 3rd level, you also pick up Roguish Audacity, which is you get a bonus to your initiative rolls equal to your charisma modifier. Cool, initiative bonus. You also gain an additional way to use your sneak attack. You can use your sneak attack whenever you don't have anybody else around you, and it's just you and your original target. Basically, you're doing kind of a one-on-one dueling scenario. You get sneak attack in those cases. You no longer need advantage. You no longer need to have a friend around you in order to get it off. That's good. Helps channel the duelist element of the Swashbuckler. At 9th level, you pick up Panache, which is kind of a taunt style feature. You make a persuasion check against a creature's insight check. It's a contested check. And the creature must be able to hear you and must share a language. They must be able to understand the words that you're saying. If you succeed, the creature now has disadvantage on attack rolls against anybody other than you and can't make opportunity attacks against targets other than you, which pairs really nicely with your fancy footwork ability that they can't make opportunity attack rolls against you if you hit them too. So you're really good at shutting someone down and helping to kind of keep the focus on you, which makes a level of sense if you're kind of this braggart style of, dashing character anyway. Further, it has out-of-combat uses. If the target that you are trying to use your Panache feature on is not hostile to you, then they become charmed, and so you get a friend outside of combat that you can use for social benefits. At 13th level, you pick up Elegant Maneuver, which is kind of a cool power. You can use a bonus action on your turn to gain advantage on the next acrobatics or athletics check that you make during the same turn. Helpful if you've got the opportunity to kind of sit for a second and focus on the task at hand, then you can have a better chances of succeeding at your athletics or your acrobatics check. And at 17th level, you pick up Master Duelist, which is basically if you make an attack on your turn and you miss, then you get to make a new attack with advantage to help make sure that you're actually going to land on this next one. You can use this power every short rest, so you're going to be able to do that a lot at 17th level. So those are all the features here. These are all the different archetypes that rogues have now from Xanathar's guide. As you can tell, I don't particularly like most of them. I think that the Inquisitive is a little bit off the mark. I think that anybody who wants to play an Inquisitor style character can probably get along just as well by just stacking heavily on wisdom and insight checks and trying to make as many insight checks as they can. I think that works out reasonably well. The Mastermind isn't so bad. The Mastermind gives you a couple of interesting combat powers that you can use. I would like the idea of doing the bonus actions help. I think that's cool. That's an interesting way to do it. But otherwise, I don't really like the rest of the powers that you get for the Mastermind. The Scout is okay. It just feels a little bit underwhelming, especially compared to like the Gloomstalker for the Ranger type. I'm not sure why anybody would want to choose to be a rogue just to get the Scout, whereas they could instead just go for more of a stealthy-oriented Ranger. But I do like the Swashbuckler. I think the Swashbuckler is fun. I think that there is a roleplay element that comes from the Swashbuckler that people vibe with, that people enjoy playing to kind of be the swaggering bravado style character. That one's interesting. And the powers that go along with it are kind of cool and fun too. One thing that I will point out again about the Swashbuckler is in order to really get the benefit from the Swashbuckler, you need to recognize that when you make an attack roll against somebody, you can then walk away from them because you're not going to take an attack of opportunity from them. And so you're going to want to play this character as a highly mobile character. So that's it. So those are the 4 new archetypes that we have. Let me know what you think about these down in the comments below. Let me know if you agree with my fairly scathing review of them here. Otherwise, come talk to me over on social media. I'm at Titan Bear Gaming, and you can find me over there basically on any kind of social media platform. Like the video, subscribe to the channel so you can see when I'm putting out these other new ones. And otherwise, until next time I see you, have more fun, would you? It's good for you.